Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. Today, we have a wonderful thought leadership session as the School of Business has been conducting since last year. And we hope that these thought leadership sessions are becoming well and are serving a good purpose in the lives and the insights of those who attend them. Today, we have Dr. Satinder Dhiman as our speaker. Dr. Dhiman is, among many other things, the chair and director of the MBA program and a professor of management in our School of Business at Woodbury University. He holds a PhD in social sciences from Tilburg University and a doctorate in organizational leadership from Pepperdine University. He also holds multiple master's degrees. A prolific author and editor, Dr. Dhiman has been the author, co-author, editor, and co-editor, as well as translator of over 40 books on leadership, workplace well-being, and spirituality in business. Those are, by the way, also the topics in which he teaches, along with ethics, workplace spirituality, and more. He has served as the editor-in-chief for several major reference works and is currently editing the Palgrave Encyclopedia of Leadership and Change Management. Dr. Dhiman is a recipient of multiple national and international professional honors, including the ACBSP International Teacher of the Year Award. There was so much more that I could say, but I thought, why just fill the air with information about the author while we can hear the author and the speaker, the thought leader, at work? So now, without further ado, your attention for Dr. Satinder Dhiman.
Thank you, John, for this wonderful introduction. Sometime when I hear this, I kind of ask, is she talking about me or someone else? there is always that doubt, Today's topic is a interesting thought experiment called Ring of Gyges. It is a challenge that is given to Plato in his book, The Republic. I'm going to look at it from two different lenses. One, what the challenge is and what can it teach us, because Plato, of all philosophers, is primarily concerned with living a good life. First of all, what is a good life? He leaves us with a question, are we living a good life, moment to moment? Are we growing more kinder, more humane, less wild, less base, and less sort of violent moment by moment? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get into what this thing is. First of all, a few things about Plato. One of the most controversial observation ever made about Plato was by a 20th century Harvard professor, A.N. Whitehead, who said that all Western philosophy, European philosophy for that matter, after Plato is a series of footnotes to Plato. Now, that is a very tall claim, which means that all philosophy after Plato is either a restatement of Plato's thought positions and or something somebody wants to say against that. Here is another one. I mean, idea is to provoke thought, All true philosophies Plato rightly comprehended, all bad philosophies Plato misunderstood. I could not find, for my money's worth, this quote exactly anywhere. However, AI said that it can very well be from the writings of Nietzsche, who has a love-hate relation with Plato, which basically it says that if you agree with Plato, that is philosophy rightly comprehended. If you misunderstood him, too bad. That is philosophy misunderstood. But that's an interesting statement. We have some philosophy people here. I wanted to this is when you buy insurance, there are some waiver classes. This is a waiver class. Philosophy bakes no bread. It is true, but it is perhaps equally true that no bread would ever been baked without some sort of thinking, philosophy behind it. Ring of Gyges. This particular story, Plato did not invent. Let's be very clear. It has existed within the annals of Greek history or ancient history. One of the version we find it in Plato's Republic, Book 2. Book 2, meaning there are 10 books in Republic. In the very beginning, after first book introduction, Plato introduces this particular story about the magical ring of Gyges. Gyges was a shepherd. One day he was going his business, and an earthquake opened the earth. He goes inside that opening where he saw a hollow bronze horse. There are different variations of the myth. In this particular version, Plato says that in that bronze horse, hollow inside, there was a dead body which was wearing on the skeleton a ring. And this shepherd, out of curiosity, of all things, he takes the ring from the skeleton's body and puts it on his finger, gets out of it, gets out of the opening, and then the earthquake is over, and he goes back to his business, and he realizes that this is a magical ring, magical in the sense that it bestowed upon the shepherd Gyges the power, the gift of invisibility, meaning when he will turn the ring in a certain way, he will become invisible. He noticed that while he was talking to his friends, and the friends started saying, "Oh, where is Gyges?" while he was sitting right there, but he was not visible to his friends. Now, this boy realizing that his actions have no consequence. We know what that phrase means. By virtue of invisibility granted by this magical ring, Gyges succumbed to the temptation. Now, very carefully chosen expression. He succumbed to the temptation of using or misusing this newfound power. How did he do that? He acted purely out of self-interest, self-centeredness. He goes ahead, he enters the fort, seduces the queen, kills the king, and finally seizes the throne. Now, this story Plato uses as a metaphor for life. He has something deeper in mind. The story is very simple. On the face of it means if we remove external consequences, how would a person act? What would you be when nobody is looking? That's the thought experiment Plato is conducting. And 2,300 years later, we are still trying to find an answer. And when we, in the modern language, we define honesty as what you do when nobody's looking. But the story is not about, in Plato's mind, it is not so much. He uses it to stage the point, but he's not interested in external consequences regulating the human behavior. It is more about an internal moral imperative. What would you do when you have no fear of being discovered, found out? How would you act? That shows what kind of person a person is behind or underneath the skin. Now, in the story, to not go too far from Plato's Republic, two main characters, actually one main character, Socrates and Glaucon. Glaucon is Plato's brother. So although Plato is not present, but his brothers are, so he gets the first-hand information. So Glaucon challenges Socrates. This is, you see, Plato does not write a philosophical treatise. He doesn't give you answers. If you are looking for answers, you are looking at the wrong place. Plato helps us clarify our questions and takes us on a journey to find the answers themselves. Some of his dialogues conclude inconclusively, where people in the dialogue throw their hands in air, disappointed. But that's okay. Plato is not there to provide you a dished out answer, but he engages you in a conversation. In the beginning was the conversation, and the conversation was with Plato in this case. So Socrates was challenged by Glaucon, saying, Socrates, look, This is what I think human behavior, human nature is. If somebody has power, why would they act honestly? Why would they not act like Gyges? They want to get all the wealth they can. Good means, bad means, doesn't matter. Prove to me, Glaucon and Adimantus say, prove to us that a person with unlimited power, unchecked power, will act ethically, not because of external threats and consequences, but due to some internal reason, regardless of external rewards and reputation. And Plato will devote rest of his book, 8 books, to answer this question in a very nuanced, well-modulated way, and he doesn't give all the answers. He keeps giving you a little bit. Book fourth, book fifth, and until book 10th. So we shouldn't do any conclusions about Plato's mind. So what we are up against is the question that from millennia we are struggling. What kind of person you are when no one is looking. This is the ultimate test of ethics. You will be wondering why Plato, why this story, and why by a professor whose responsibility is to teach, or whose charge is to teach leadership. Because the most important aspect of leadership is the inner moral compass that a leader has. That's why we are looking at it. Plato builds the core argument about the health of the soul. At the end, he's going to reply, but he builds it through a series of small baby steps in book 5 through book 9. And then finally in book 10, when he has pulled all the punches, he pulls the final punch by invoking a myth of afterlife, that not only being just, not only acting righteously, acting justly, fairly, helps you in living a fulfilled life. In this life, it also helps you after life. So this life, after life, both lives, it's a myth of earth. It's a topic unto itself. You can write a book on it, but that's not my topic for today. This thought experiment this is the key to understanding this particular presentation. This thought experimentation was designed to strip justice of all external consequences. In the wake of perfect impunity bestowed by magical ring, however, Plato, through Socrates, skillfully shifts the focus inward. What kind of person are you when no one is looking? See, Glaucon is a young man. He's 36, 37. Through Socrates' only hope is that if he can teach a young person of what it means to be a responsible human being, then he has some hope. That's why he's focusing on this young man. But this young man is not an ordinary young man. He's Plato's brother. He pushes back. He's not a pushover. He pushes back and he challenges Socrates. So every time he challenges Socrates, Socrates comes up with some more finer argument. So the idea is what kind of person we are. Now, what is the psychological health of the soul argument in Plato's Republic? Now, if you are wondering what these numbers are, I think that if we exclude Bible, Plato is the most finally, granulatingly, I would say more at a very granular level, documented author. Every line of Plato's Republic, every line of his other dialogues is referenced with a number. So 580 meaning, a certain line, a paragraph. Within a paragraph, D meaning a certain line within a paragraph. So you can see. So it occurs in the argument. Plato finally says that a person who is just and fair, that person just lives a honest, happy life, because his soul is not in battle against himself or herself. His soul is whole. It is ordered, well ordered. Whereas the unjust person, no matter how powerful that person is. So many modern leaders can take note here. The unjust soul, no matter how powerful that is, just like in Gyges' case, remains fragmented. It is a soul thing. Your soul will be less whole, less complete, less fulfilled if you were not if you were not honest through your dealings, and the person stays enslaved. Now, for Plato, this is a very big deal. I mean, at the end of the book, he makes an argument that all kind of people come back. For example, if I make a mistake, I'm given a chance in next life to correct. But there is one exception. A tyrant does not come back, is not given the chance. Why was Plato so harsh on tyrants? Because he saw the tyranny of 30 while he was young, and that shock never left him. So he says a tyrant is, I don't know, he's a mathematician, and there's a way to calculate 729. A tyrant is 729 times worse in terms of his happiness or her happiness than a person who lives an examined life like a philosopher, sorry. So the question is, a just person for Plato is a healthy person, has a blessed inner harmony, and can live a truly good life regardless of outer appearances. Outwardly, look at Socrates, he had to die. But in death, also in life, he lived a noble life. He did not run away. He had a chance. He argued till the end. One of his student, Crito, actually gives him the option to escape. The jail. He says, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to continue my journey." So Plato had Socrates in mind. That was his role model. A person who chose to die, even if that was unjust. He chose to die than to escape, from the rule that was imposed upon by the law. What are the leadership lessons? Well, it underscores that if you are looking at ethic, and it has not changed. I mean, it's not that in 21st century we have discovered some other, sort of panacea for leadership. We have not, and we know that we have not. Ethical leadership, value-based leadership is defined by integrity, is defined by accountability. Now, the difference between Plato and Glaucon, Socrates Glaucon, is Glaucon thinks that accountability is enforced from outside. Whereas Socrates' point is that it is an inner moral compulsion. A person will do what is good thing to do, whether or not external rewards or punishments are in place or not. And it requires courage. It requires courage. Sometimes silence requires courage. And sometimes action requires courage to act with integrity and accountability in the absence of external oversight. Modern leaders must strive to embody these virtues of integrity, accountability, and courage, and resist the temptation of unchecked power and in the wake of temptations such as those of Gyges. Now, history provides many examples of leaders who have both failed and succeeded when confronted with the temptations similar to the temptations that Gyges had. I'm going to look at some examples and then conclude my discussion in the next 15 minutes with some positive note about what Plato has in mind finally about living a good, blessed life. Now, Plato had a very interesting thing in mind. I mean, if you ask me, the most important forceful quote in the entire Republic, perhaps it is that Plato thought that until philosophers become kings, or meaning leaders, or until leaders become philosophers, meaning wise, that start thinking wisely, we will not have respite from the evil or misery that as human beings we have in the society. So if there is one exception to Lord Acton's observation that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, many people would agree that probably Marcus Aurelius is the only exception to that. Marcus Aurelius had the absolute power. He was the unquestioned king, geographically from London to Egypt. That's a big stretch of land. And back then, Roman Empire was the only empire. They have not heard about Far East. They said this is it, and he actually ruled the whole empire for 19 some years, and never ever the weight of his absolute power, he did not crumble under the weight of absolute power. He lived a noble life. Power did not corrupt him. Power actually ennobled him. This is probably the only example in the history of philosophy, in the Western Hemisphere at least, where Plato's philosopher king, sort of dream ever came close to a human realization or possibility. Now, in the contemporary organizations, we have some challenges, some of us have seen, many of us in this presentation, they were there when Enron's saga was unfolding. Enron had best people, some were from Harvard. They had degrees in marketing and finance from Harvard. And they just kind of, the smartest people in the room, they messed up the whole thing because the greed, the self-centeredness was rampant. And at that time, you see, why are we bringing this example? Because it is a question of external oversight. But you can argue, Professor, we used to have SEC, the Security Exchange Commission. You know what the Security Exchange Commission said about Enron? They said, we were not able to detect all these, miscalculations because we were understaffed. This was the official statement of SEC. And finally, Enron went down. And with that, the pension savings, retirement savings of thousands of people also were drowned. So whenever we have the power to do something without external check, whether it is external check by per se from law side or internal moral imperative, this is what we get. In the modern time, beyond Enron, we know the accounting improprieties of Floor Corporation, in which I think from almost for a 5-year stretch, they were falsifying accounting data, and finally they were fined millions of dollars by SEC, by the government. We also have heard, some of us, the controversy of a Harvard professor, about whose research there were some doubts, and her tenureship was revoked at Harvard. First time, this is this year, 2025. First time in the history of Harvard since 1941 that a professor who teaches ethics, her tenure was revoked. Now, Gino, in all fairness, has challenged Harvard's claims and has said that none of those claims are true. So the case is still, that's why the word controversy, still going on. But this is another example that, when there is a tenureship and then there's some protection, how does that play out in real life? Meta case, some of us seen that the Meta, almost 87 million users, Facebook users, their private information was shared without their informed consent, and there was a whistleblower who said that Meta knew about it, and it caused so much psychological harm to teenagers that it's very strange that and sad that how the privacy violation and security breaches have. Similarly, internet can be looked at as modern day a ring of Gyges. I was reading an article while I was working on the chapter for Encyclopedia on this topic. I found out that there was a write-up by somebody, a blog entry, in which this author says that we have millions of ring of Gyges type people, modern day ring of Gyges, because internet gives you certain anonymity through the sophisticated algorithms and your private IDs and all that. One can hide behind and put up. Some people have multiple accounts on Facebook. They use different usernames, etc., and they put out some content which may not be becoming, which may not be possible if we ask them to come out as real people. So what does it all add up to? Why we need to learn from examples like the one we just shared? Because Plato's question is, Plato, if you look at in All True Justice, people call it, that a series of footnotes is not a good way to characterize Plato, but his contribution is very unique. Just look at one of the theory which I have not even touched. It is called the theory of forms, which is a topic which has baffled people ever since. Plato says that the real truth of the things lies in the form behind the physical shape. For example, you can draw a triangle on the board and erase it, but that does not erase the triangleness or triangular spaceness of the triangle. And he says that everything has a form behind it, which continues in the practical life. For example, let's say that you go to some strange country, and you go to a fruit market, or you go to a shopping center and you see some fruits there. There's a watermelon, but it's very small. You have seen big watermelons at Costco here, but you will never mistake that watermelon as a mango or as a orange. You will still call it watermelon, because in your mind you have or nor you will call it cantaloupe, because you have the form of watermelon in your mind somehow. That's why kids, when they even start learning geometry, I mean, you tell them draw a circle and tell them this is triangle. It will not go down very well with them. They will say no, this can never be a triangle. This is circle. So Plato thinks that we have certain things in our mind already, and they are the forms of reality behind. Form is a reality behind something. Just like we know that what does a watermelon look like? Even if the shapes can change, even the color can change. And he ties that to, in a very strange way, theory of learning. He says that all learning is remembering. It's very beautiful. I mean, so Anna, I see you on the screen. Plato will tell you, Anna, that you are already super genius. You just have forgotten. So by taking MOL classes here at Woodbury, we just have reminded you about the greatness that you have already forgotten. This is Plato's theory of learning. How beautiful, how life affirming. So I mean, this is not my topic, but you see the contribution. But ultimately, Plato is interested in answering one question: what is best life? How, as human being, we can fashion our life in the best possible manner. Let's see in a series way how we can develop our thesis. A good life in Plato's mind is not a life which is given to pleasure or sentimental, good feeling, happiness studies like make us believe. No, it is a life which is dedicated to a fulfilling purpose or function. Do you have a fulfilling purpose or function that you fulfill in your life? What is a good human life? A life in which we are able to fulfill its function as human beings. Interesting. And who's a good person, by the way? A good person is someone who is able to fulfill their function or purpose as a human being. It's a circular logic. What is the purpose of being a human being? And wherein lies the glory of being a human being? Plato uses a word called arete, a very beautiful word. There are two words that Plato uses in Republic: arete and techne, Greek words. They are full of meaning. Arete meaning virtue. Now, virtue doesn't mean in the ethic sense only. It means the functional excellence of a thing. So when I say, Anna, what is your arete? I am asking, whatever role life has given you at Woodbury or any other place, how do you fulfill that role in an excellent manner? And Greeks define happiness in a very beautiful way. They say happiness is the exercise of human power along the lines of excellence. So virtue is the functional excellence of a thing. For example, a horse arete would be its strength and swiftness. So not only people, things also have their arete. A well-built house, if some architecture friends are listening, so a well-built architectural design has an arete. Greeks would say it has a beauty, harmony, all of that going for it on its own. Similarly, a beautiful bracelet or an exquisite painting has an arete. It fulfills the function for what it is made in an excellent manner. So wherein lies the arete of human being? The question arises. So the question is, Greeks were very smart. They said that if living a good life, if living a morally right life is not linked to happiness, then people will not care about it. Will living a good life ultimately result in happiness? Plato's answer is yes. That's the whole thing about his thesis in the book about Ring of Gyges. Now, the question is, if you had the Ring of Gyges, which gave you the gift of invisibility and anonymity through internet, for example, now, and enabled you to do whatever you want without ever being found out, what will still be your motivation to be good? That is the question Plato wants us to deal with. That would you still act good? And if you do, what will be your motivation? Now, where does the glory of human beings lie? Sometimes I ask in my classes also, does it lie in making lots and lots of money? You can ask any teenager, this will resonate with them. Being rich and famous, we have even TV shows, the lifestyles of rich and famous. Drinking lots and lots of beer. I'm not picking on beer, but maybe orange juice, for those people who don't like drinking beer. Having fun, being successful, doing what you please. Many people think success meaning I can do whatever I like. But that definition, anybody who has lived beyond 30 would know that that doesn't go very far. Being happy and fulfilled is purpose of human life. Glory lies in being happy, fulfilled, evolving morally, psychologically. One of my teachers back home many years ago, while I was coming to this country, I went to him to get his blessings. He told me only two words. He said, evolve and help others evolve. It was in our language, it was more forceful the way he said it. He said, only two things you can do as a teacher. You evolve yourself and help others evolve who come in your contact psychologically, morally, and spiritually. Serving common good, growing in goodness, daily, moment by moment. Now you see, as a civilization, how do we measure success? Do we measure success by the number of houses a person has, or how much money they have in their Swiss account, or how much power or how much fame they have, or we measure their success by saying, what kind of goodness they live every day? How do they touch human lives? Do they have time for people around them? One does not want to be that successful that one ceases to have time for people around them. Let's analyze the most popular candidates for good life or happiness. Pleasure, of course. We have not taken any vow against that. Money is very complex. Research is, the jury is out. There is no research that I am aware of which concludes whether money is motivation after that point or ceases to be motivation. It is a very complex thing. You can never take money off the table. You can never, people who have billions and billions of dollars, in a very strange way, there may be some part of them still working for money. Health and strength, of course, life itself. This analysis can be extended to other things like what is good, like success, power, and the rest of it. Viktor Frankl, always comes to rescue. He says, when a person cannot find a deep sense of meaning, one of the best quotes I've ever seen, they distract themselves with pleasure. So there you have it, if one doesn't have meaning, if somebody's chasing pleasure out and out, that means something deeper. Probably they don't drive that satisfaction from something deeper, like a purpose. What is Plato's Republic all about? Plato's question is, friends, what would be a society like where everyone lived a good life? Just imagine. Just imagine. The other day, we were talking about this thing about the responsibilities and rights. I made a comment. I said, in a family, if everybody took care of their responsibilities, everybody's rights would be taken care of on their own. But imagine if everybody lived a life which is informed by an inner moral compass rather than external rewards. But there is a caveat. Plato and Greek thinkers do not mean by happiness what we call these days happiness studies. You feel good or you get a life where you get whatever you want. That's a teenage definition of happiness. We're not concerned with that. By good life, they meant a flourishing, thriving, and fulfilling life. Plato makes a bold claim, very bold claim in all his books. You would live a flourishing life if you had lived a virtuous life. There, with his master stroke, that if you want to be happy in the final reckoning, you have to be a good person. You have to be a kind person. You know how Marcus Aurelius was chosen. You know how Marcus Aurelius, 3 generations removed, Hadrian chose Antonius. He chose because one day he watched him helping his father-in-law, old father-in-law, get safely through the stairs, he said, this man has kindness. Among other things, if you have kindness, then you can lead. Living a life of excellence and contribution is a moral imperative. When you are any less than you can be, when you fail to contribute your allotted share, this is very important. And this has been very important for my own personal life work. When one fails to contribute their allotted share, that person has shortchanged the universe. That person has left the universe poorer in certain way. So if you are not all you can be, then you are leaving the universe in some way poorer than you should have. What is life worth living, you ask? It is a life devoted to seeking the true, the good, and the beautiful. This is the question you have to ask ourselves. We have to ask, am I living a life, moment by moment, which is more beautiful, which is more true, and which is more good, which contributes to the common good, being good, doing good, finding good. As a teacher, as a leader, that's what you do. You are a good finder. The only job a leader has, truly, a true leader has, is finding good in others. Stephen Covey called it Eighth Habit. I wrote a full book on it. Using your gifts for the good of others to lessen the suffering in the world. If you have a better deal than this, please let me know. That will be the topic for the next book. For me, there is nothing higher than using. If you ask me, Professor, what is your definition of a successful life? I would say, if you are using your gifts for the good of others in order to lessen the suffering in the world, it is very important. Suffering is real. I mean, my Buddhist training tells me that people who say, oh, suffering is very real. I grew up in poverty. I know what poverty is firsthand. I didn't study poverty. I didn't look at poverty through a TV image. It was real to me, So there is a suffering in the world. How does your work contribute to lessening the suffering in the world? That is the question of the question. If you are able to use whatever gifts you have gifts with your hands, you have gifts with your mind, you are artistic, you write very well, you type very fast. Are you using those gifts for the good of others? And in order to lessen some sort of giving some comfort, if not lessening suffering to in the world, that is the goal that we all can aspire for life. So when I bring it all together, my last slide, almost last slide, it is a life of moral excellence, being the best version in modern language, being the best version of 2.1 version of yourself. It is the life of meaning and contribution, meaning and contribution, serving selflessly a cause that is bigger than yourself, a cause that will outlive you, that will outlast you. That's where our glory lies, friends. Are we serving a cause bigger than ourselves? A cause which will not die when we move on, a call which will live when we pass on in this life? That is the question of questions. And how do you live a life, fulfilling life? Plato's one-line answer is, it's a life of personal moral excellence across a lifetime. It is not that when you were 29, you did that. You have to do it when you were 30, 50, 60, 70. Life of personal moral excellence across a lifetime. Somebody said, don't call a person happy until they're dead. That's the reason, because until at the very end, you can test your values, minding your own business quietly. If you ever meet Plato in Starbucks and ask him, Plato, give me your one-line answer to best life, he would say, mind your own business quietly. Here, minding your own business is a very telling phrase. It means doing what's best. Do you know best in the best possible way? May all living beings be happy and free.